Hey everyone, I can't believe it. I finally got on. I do apologize for being late. So, technology is the bane of my existence, honestly. I had my laptop, I was trying to figure out how to do this, and here we are. I'm finally here, and I hope you're joining in soon. So, while we are checking, I am going to be checking to make sure that I am live in the right group because last time I didn't do it right. So excuse me while I set things up. All right. Okay. So today we're going to start talking about confidence. Stop trying to build confidence. Oh, this is such a touchy subject. But before we get started, I just wanted to say hi to everyone and welcome. I'm so glad you're here. If you are live, check in. I want to see some activity happening in the comments. Let me make sure that I'm here so that the comments are available to me. Okay. Now, I want to celebrate something with you. I love that you're here. Whether you're here live or here on the replay, you're taking time to stop, listen, reflect, and ask yourself some honest questions. And that's huge. Especially if you're a woman who's always busy. And I do appreciate the time that you take to stop your constant tasks and listen in. Or even maybe you're listening in while you're doing other things, which is fantastic as well. You are extremely busy, and I appreciate that. You're the woman who is always doing for others. You're the woman who usually is taking care of everyone else. And so if you're here live with me today, I want to take a second to acknowledge that. You showed up for yourself. And I think that's worth celebrating. And if you're watching on the replay, the same thing applies. Okay? You may not have been here live, but you're choosing to spend some of your time thinking about yourself and your needs, your patterns, and the life that you are creating. So welcome. I'm really happy that you're here. And if you're joining me live, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and just for fun, tell me, were you the strong one growing up? The reliable one? The helpful one? The one who didn't need much or didn't ask for much? Because that's where today's conversation begins. Today, we're talking about something I think so many capable women have been told that they need. More confidence. Maybe you've been told you need to speak up more. Trust yourself more. Stop worrying about what people think. Be more assertive. And maybe you've tried. Maybe you have tried. You've read the books. You've listened to the podcasts. You've done the affirmations. You've told yourself, I'm confident. I trust myself. I am worthy. And maybe for a little while you even believed it. I love affirmations. They're fantastic. So please don't get me wrong when I say anything about them. But they are not the solution, because they work for a little while. And then real life happens. Your boss asks you to take on one more project, one more task. Perhaps your mother needs something. Your partner asks, what do you want for dinner? Where do you want to go on vacation? Someone is disappointed with you. And suddenly, that confidence you were supposed to have seems to disappear. You know what you want to say, but you don't say it. You know you don't want to take on one more thing, but you say yes. You know you're exhausted and you just want a minute to yourself, but you keep going. And then you wonder, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just be more confident? Well, today I want to challenge that whole idea, because I don't think you necessarily have a confidence problem. I think you may have been conditioned. And those are two very different things. So let's talk about it. Let me give you an example. Imagine that you are at work. You've already had a full day. You've got your own deadlines. And you've been tired before the day even started. And your boss says, hey, could you take care of this one extra thing? And immediately inside you, you think, no. It's not even complicated. You know the answer. You don't have the capacity to take on one more thing. But then, almost before you had time to think, another thought arrives. Maybe I should. Everyone is busy. I don't want them to think I'm not committed. They'll think I'm difficult. Maybe I can just get it done tonight. And then you say, sure, I can do that. Now you might look at that situation and say, she needs more confidence. She needs to stick up for herself. But does she? She knew what she wanted. Her body knew what she needed. And she knew the answer. The problem wasn't that she didn't believe she was capable of saying no. The problem was that she had something inside of her somewhere saying no had been connected to something she was afraid of. Perhaps of being judged. Perhaps being disliked. Perhaps being seen as difficult. Being seen as less committed to her job. This is not simply a confidence problem. This is conditioning. And it comes from way back. Here's another example. You're the person in the family who handles everything. If there's a problem, people call you. If something needs organizing, you do it. If someone needs help, you are the one they turn to. And people have probably praised you for this. You're the strong one. You're the dependable one. You'd hear things like, I don't know what we'd do without you. You always know what to do. You're so responsible. And maybe these things are true. Maybe you are strong. And you're most likely very capable. And you're incredibly dependable. But there is a question, I think, that is worth asking. What if the things you were praised for are now the things that are exhausting you? I'm going to give you a minute to think about that. What if the things you were praised for are now the things that are exhausting you? Because when everyone tells you that you are the strong one, it can become very difficult to say, I'm not okay. I need help. I can't do this. I don't want to. You begin to believe that your value is connected to your ability to handle things. And then asking for help, you can feel like failure. Needing support, you can feel like weakness. Rest can feel like something you have to earn. So when someone tells you, you just need to be more confident, you think, yes, that's the problem. I need to believe in myself more. But maybe you already believe in yourself. Perhaps you just don't feel that it's safe to disappoint other people. Maybe you don't believe that you're allowed to have needs that inconvenience others. That's a hard one. Maybe you don't believe people will stay in your life if you stop being useful. Oh, the need to be needed. Those are very different beliefs. And no amount of saying, I'm confident, is going to automatically undo them. Because your brain is not asking, can I do this? It's also asking, what will happen if I do? Let's take a very simple example. Someone asks you to do something. You want to say no. You know you have every right to say no. But then you imagine their reaction. Maybe they'll be disappointed. Maybe they'll be annoyed. Maybe they'll think you're selfish. And suddenly, saying yes feels safer for you. Not necessarily does it feel better. Safer. This is the part I think we miss when we talk about confidence. Sometimes you're not lacking confidence. Sometimes you are choosing the behavior that your nervous system believes will keep you safe. You say yes because yes keeps the peace. I hear that. I hear that a lot when I'm speaking to women in the self-abandonment audit. You stay quiet because silence prevents conflict. Many of us have difficulty with conflict. Excuse me. You overgive because being needed feels safer than being vulnerable. You handle everything because needing someone else feels uncomfortable. And then we call it a lack of confidence. Excuse me. But the real question is, what did I learn would happen if I stopped being this version of myself? This is where I think the identity of being the strong one becomes complicated. Because there is nothing wrong with being strong. There is nothing wrong with being capable. There is nothing wrong with being the person that people can rely on. The problem is when that becomes the only version of you that feels acceptable. many people does that hit? When you believe I can be strong, but I can't need anything. I can be dependable, but I can't disappoint anyone. I can help everyone, but I can't ask for help. I can take care of everyone, but I don't get to need taken care of or being taken care of. That's when strength becomes a trap. And here's the interesting part. The people around you may not even be asking you to stay in the role anymore, but you still continue doing it. Because the role has become a part of your identity. You don't just think, I help people. You think, I'm the person who helps people. And you don't just think, I sometimes handle difficult things. You think, I'm the strong one. And when you begin to change the behavior, it can feel extremely uncomfortable. You say no, and then you feel guilty. You ask for help, and then you feel exposed. You let someone else handle something, and then you feel like you should be doing more. You finally rest, and then you feel like you should be more productive. That discomfort doesn't necessarily mean you're doing something wrong. Sometimes it simply means you're doing something that's unfamiliar or new. And this is why mindset work alone often doesn't fully work. Because you can think, I am worthy. But if you have spent your entire life acting as though your worth depends on what you do for everyone else, your behavior may not immediately follow your new thought. You can say, I trust myself. But if you've spent years ignoring your own signals, self-trust has to be rebuilt through experience. You have to give yourself the evidence that you can trust yourself. Evidence that says, I can say no and survive the disappointment. I can ask for help and not be rejected. I can rest and the world will continue. I can make a decision without asking everyone else what they think. That's a hard one. I can stop being endlessly available and still be loved. This is why I don't want you to focus on only becoming more confident. I want you to start noticing what you have been trained to believe. So the next time you find yourself doing something you don't want to, pause. And instead of asking, why am I so lacking in confidence? Ask, what do I believe will happen if I don't do this? And just fill in the blank of what this is. Maybe the answer will be that they will be disappointed. They'll think I'm being selfish. They'll be angry with me. Perhaps they won't need me anymore. I'll be seen as difficult and selfish. I'll let everyone down. That answer is incredibly important, because now you are no longer looking at the behavior. You are beginning to see the belief underneath it. And once you can see the belief, you can begin to question them. Maybe someone will be disappointed. Can they survive that? Maybe someone will think that you're selfish. But is that really true? Maybe someone will be annoyed. Does their annoyance mean that you did something wrong? Or maybe their annoyance is signaling that you are stopping them, or actually forcing them to do the work themselves. Could that create a room for a different kind of relationship? Think about that. Could those moments of, once you've questioned those beliefs, create room in your life for a different kind of relationship with yourself and with them? These types of questions help to change the pattern. Don't look at it as, how can I force myself to be more confident? But I want you to consider, what have I been conditioned to believe about what happens when I choose myself? Because I want to make something very clear. You don't need to become a completely different person. You don't need to become loud and aggressive. You don't need to stop caring for other people. You don't need to stop being generous. You don't need to stop being the strong one. The goal is not to get rid of those parts of you. The goal is to stop believing that they are the only parts of you that are allowed to exist. You can be strong and need help. You can be capable and not want to do something. You can be generous but have limits. You can care about people and yet disappoint them. You can be a good person and still say no. Those things can exist at the same time. So here's the practical exercise I want you to try this week. Think of one recent situation where you did something that cost you your time, energy, your peace, or your own plans. Maybe you took on something you didn't want to do. Maybe you stayed quiet rather than provided an opinion. Maybe you helped someone even though you were exhausted. Maybe you agreed to do something because you didn't want to disappoint them. And you ask yourself, what did I believe would happen if I had chosen myself instead? Don't judge the answer, just write it down. Maybe it's, they would be angry. They would think I was selfish. They would stop relying on me. They would be disappointed. I would feel guilty. That is the conditioning, not the truth. The conditioning, and simply being able to see it, is a very important first step. Because you cannot change a pattern while believing the pattern is your personality. You are not just a people pleaser. You're not just bad at boundaries. You're not just not confident enough. There is usually a reason you learned to behave this way. At some point, this pattern helped you belong, helped you to avoid conflict. It helped you to feel needed, and it helped you to receive approval. It helped you to feel safe. But something that helped you once may not be helping you now. And it's important to hear this. You are allowed to question whether you still need to live by the rules you learned a very long time ago. Does it fit in with the life that you have right now? So if trying to build confidence is something that you've been working on and wondering why it hasn't changed the way you behave, maybe confidence was never the real problem. Maybe you've been conditioned to believe that choosing yourself comes with a cost. And the work itself isn't to force yourself to become more confident overnight. It's to discover, to begin discovering, what did I learn I had to do before being loved? What did I learn I had to do to be considered as a good girl? What did I learn I had to do to feel safe? And then slowly through small choices begin asking, is this still true? Because you may not need to become more confident. You may simply need to stop confusing your conditioning with who you are. So let's bring this all together. This was a long one, and I do apologize. Because I don't want you to leave today's live thinking, okay, that was interesting. I want you to leave with something that you can actually notice and work with this week. There are 3 things I want you to take away from this conversation. Notice the conditioning. The next time you find yourself doing something you don't actually want to do, pause. Don't immediately ask yourself, why am I so bad at boundaries? Instead, what am I afraid of will happen if I don't do this? Is the fear that they'll be disappointed, angry, think you're selfish, think you're being difficult? Just notice it. You don't have to fix it. You simply begin to see the programming underneath the behavior. Number 2, separate their reaction from your worth. Excuse me. Someone being disappointed with your decision doesn't automatically mean that you've made the wrong decision. Someone being annoyed doesn't mean that you've done something wrong. Someone needing you less doesn't mean that you're less valuable. This is important, a very important distinction. You can care about someone's feelings without making their feelings your responsibility. And you can allow someone to be disappointed without abandoning yourself to make sure that they aren't. And number 3, make one small choice that is different. Don't try to transform your entire life this week, because it will fail. Don't suddenly become the woman who says no to everything and everyone. Pick one small moment. Maybe instead of immediately say yes, hit the pause. Check in with your body. And instead of automatically saying yes, let me think about it. Should be your response. Let me check your my calendar is another response. Maybe you ask someone for help instead of automatically handling it all yourself. perhaps take a rest without actually feeling like you need to earn it. Maybe you make a decision without asking 5 people what they think. Maybe admit, actually, I don't want to do that. The point here isn't to feel completely confident when you do it. The point is to give yourself a new experience, to prove to yourself that I can choose myself and nothing terrible will happen. That's how self-trust begins to grow. Not through another affirmation, through evidence. So this week, I want you to notice the conditioning, question the consequences you're afraid of, and make one small choice that honors you. And I want you to remember, you don't have to become a different woman. You don't have to become louder. You don't have to stop caring. You just have to stop believing that those are the only parts of you that are allowed to exist. You can be strong and need help. I want you to remember that. So if today's conversation resonated with you, follow along with my posts next week, because we're going to unpack these patterns even further. We're going to look at what happens when being the strong one becomes part of your identity. We're going to talk about how you begin rebuilding trust. And then join me again next Thursday. Hopefully I'll get all of this technical BS figured out, because I don't know what's going on. And we'll talk soon. So come back again next Thursday, 1 p.m. Central Eastern Time, 7 a.m. I said that wrong. 1 p.m. Central European Time and 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Talk soon.